Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I love playing powerful vehicles. I love playing autoloaders, tanks with high DPM, tanks with great mobility, tanks with great camera rating. And so if you absolutely love that, then this definitely isn't going to be the video for you. This is going to be all about possibly one of the worst tanks, tier for tier in the game. It is the SP1C. This tier 7 German light tank. I mean, are we even surprised at this point that, of course, it's German if I'm talking about? It doesn't have all of those aspects that I was just talking about. It's just an absolute stepping stone up a ladder that you really don't want to be able to climb. It's more like that you're trying to have a stepping stone across the bog of eternal stench, or maybe just some kind of lava pit. And eventually you're going to end up with maybe the RU-251, which is kind of quite a fun tier 9 light tank. And then you end up with an absolute stinker, which is the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen, the worst tier 10 tank in the game. So the SP1C fails for all the same reasons why the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen fails. It's quite large, it's a real easy tank to be able to hit. It has one of the worst camera ratings of any of the tier 7 light tanks. And so is it any surprise that statistically this vehicle is the weakest tier 7 light tank in the game? In the last 30 days, it's averaged about 46% wins. So for every player who manages to break even and get 50% wins, yeah, there's going to be someone out there who's getting 42% wins average in this vehicle. And it's really no surprise for all of the statistics, well, all of the reasons that I just described with the tank. It's got the worst spots in the last 30 days. It's got the worst damage in the last 30 days. Is there actually anything this vehicle can do? Well, yeah, I guess. If you know what you're doing and you set the tank up correctly, and I'm probably using coated optics, maybe vents, and possibly a gun rammer on this vehicle. Although, as I've been suggesting, for example, with my video yesterday, I've been quite often dropping gun rammers on vehicles that have such abysmal DPM to try and focus on spotting. So maybe you could put yourself a low exhaust noise system, or whatever the hell it's called, on this vehicle to be able to pump up that camera rating from something that just isn't horrific. To cap it all off, do you notice how slow these shells are? For some unknown reason, Wargaming has decided to give a tier 7 light tank 630 meters a second shell velocity on both of its standard rounds and also its gold rounds, which makes the vehicle very frustrating even for sniping. Okay, so now that I've talked all about the SP1C and why it's just so abysmal in the game, and I've kind of set the narrative for the absolute stinker that I'm going to be playing today, I also want to give tips and tricks for any of you out there who don't just play this tank, but there's so many tanks that are like this in the game that are just frankly way less useful than other vehicles at their tier, which end up making them rather tricky to be able to play. Maybe you don't have a very high-skilled crew on a vehicle. Maybe you're playing light tanks and you're just struggling because you don't have all of the modules unlocked yet. When you do that, quite often one of my favorite things to do on a vehicle is just to slap a pair of binoculars on it and try and get into a position where you feel like you're still going to be useful with vision, and then try and find an ally that you can be able to work with to try and supplement their hit points. Quite often when I'm playing a tier 8 tank in a tier 10 game, for example, what I will like to do is, nearly lost half my hit points there, or more than half my hit points against the Borsig, is I like to pair up with my tier 8s with a tier 10 and turn them into kind of like a tier 11 or a tier 12 tank. Because if I can tank for them or just add to their damage, then quite often you can allow them to win trades quicker, or just win trades that they otherwise wouldn't have against other tanks of equal tier. In the SP1C, it's a little bit trickier to do that, because I think that if I was to go towards the south of this map and go after the ISM and friends, I probably wouldn't do too well. And I decided to try and attack through this alleyway. This is a pretty aggressive play, and in retrospect, I must have been having some fun that night, and I probably wanted to try and push the tempo of the game, because I think this is too aggressive to go after just 2 higher tier tank destroyers. It's the equivalent of throwing rocks at a bear and, I don't know, expecting it to bring you a pot of honey that it found earlier from all the trees it's been rustling. Interesting analogy. My brain works in spectacular ways sometimes. So I do amaze myself as to what I'm going on about. You get what I'm saying. Those bears are not giving us their honey. They don't even have any honey to begin. Well, they do have honey, but it's just they're just too healthy right now to be able to get. I've got to wait later on in the game until they're older and more decrepit, and then maybe possibly I'm going to be able to sneak in and grab the pot because they've got low hit points, and I can be able to maybe finish them off in 2 shots rather than about a minute of continuous fire. Even penetrating high explosive rounds there on the Borsig, albeit one didn't penetrate, just felt like their 1,000 hit points was an absolute monster amount to be able to get through. Because of course this vehicle's got 1,466 DPM, yeah, why would it have any more? But oh, Mr. Borsig, I'm behind you. And suddenly, you don't have all of the HP. Now, if you're wondering why I was holding the shot there, it's because I wasn't spotted, and I thought to myself, well, maybe somebody else is going to be able to hit him, and I'm going to reveal my position against the Borsig by fire, which is not really very advantageous. But the WZ-111 that managed to catch us, the tank destroyer variant of the WZ-111, which is the 1FT, is now back here with us in this kind of a scenario. And this is very interesting. You're going to see that I pop up there, and I'm not sure if it's the Borsig that's catching me through the side. You'll see that I look towards my right, and every time I go up into this bush, I do manage to get spotted. So either it's the Borsig, or it's the fact that just bushes aren't equal in World of Tanks. And so what I'm going to do instead, I believe in a second, is instead of going up into that bush, I'm going to try and sneak up into this bush, and now I don't get spotted. I have no idea why. Honestly, sometimes World of Tanks, these bushes look like they're equal, but apparently they are not equal. Must be a very interesting way that it works. And that actually allows me to slip up and up and up into the bush. I'm still worried about getting caught out for the vision in the side of the Borsig. One false move here and I won't have any hit points left, and I'll have to play a different tank. Ugh. That actually sounds like almost being released from a prison when I'm having to play a vehicle like the SP1C, but no, that will not do. You've got to try your hardest in every single game that you play, QuickyBaby, and try and pump up that win ratio as much as you possibly can, right? Talk about pumping up my win ratio. I pump up my penetration there by loading a high explosive anti-tank round. And funnily enough, I get spotted as he reverses there, so I don't even know how those bushes work, to be honest with you. They're bizarre. Maybe I just found some kind of a weird bug, but let's be honest, if you played World of Tanks for as long as I have, you will know there's a lot of very weird bugs when it comes to spotting mechanics on many of the bushes. Fake bushes, we like to call them. Okay, so I was talking more about how to be able to suffer through playing stinky tanks. So I would strongly recommend to play as a support vehicle. I would strongly recommend that if you don't have good view range, just slap a pair of binoculars on and try and find somewhere where you can provide like an overview and really lock down the enemy's vision. And one of the most important things that you should ever do in World of Tanks when you're playing an awful tank like this is to lower your expectations. Are you used to getting 60% wins? Well, just be happy if you get 55. Are you used to winning half of your games? Well, then maybe start to get used to winning 45% of your games in a tank like this. How weird is this scenario? We have an SP1C going after a TS5, albeit with a Stridsvagn S1 to help us. So this Stridsvagn S1 is actually making a really nice play to get up right behind him and nail him a couple of times. And what I'm going to do is just lock down the tracks of the TS5 to hope that it will enable the S1 to be able to penetrate him. Interestingly enough, however, the TS5 looks like they saved the repair kit, and they managed to get those tracks back on quickly there, I guess knowing that they finally got their rear of their tank to the wall. And I say thank you to the Stridsvagn S1 for tanking those 2 shots from the TS5 to enable me to be able to get the kill. I'm quite surprised the S1 didn't manage to finish it off himself. It would have saved him 400 hit points. Kind of precious when you look at the scoreboard at the top of your screen and the fact that we are down 1,300 hit points here, or even 1,400 hit points here. And that is going to be a large amount to be able to make up. That's the equivalent of them having just an extra tier 8 or even a tier 8.5 tank destroyer compared to what we have. Okay, so you'll see that I'm trying to communicate with my S1. Look at the minimap right in the corner. You'll see that I'm pinging. I'm pinging here to be exact. And that's because there is a wonderful position that the S1 could use if they decided to go to the back here. It might be a little bit of an obvious bush. Perhaps the Oni would fire into it, but it's good. I would still personally use this. I wouldn't expect the Oni to blind fire, especially considering the S1 wasn't spotted there a second ago. If the S1 was to go up here, it'd have the extra height to be able to shoot down into the Oni turret. And what I would do instead is be able to spot out the Oni and allow him to be able to finish him off. Of course, when you're playing a tank like this, you've got to be real sneaky, right? So the T-71, interestingly enough, is asking me for help, and I tell the T-71 to fall back because I just can't imagine that 2 light tanks on low amounts of hit points are going to be able to go and deal with the Oni. And in this situation, I'm just starting to feel a little bit sad and as if, how are we going to be able to handle this? But our S1's attacking and our T-71 CMCD is attacking. And I'm not going to be that kind of guy that, even though I disagree with what they're doing, and I think it was the incorrect play to go after an Oni that was on pretty much all of their hit points, to not accept and try and be the bigger person here and then try and just go and support and abandon what I wanted to do, which is trying to get the challenger in the game and try and spot out the tank destroyers. So let's go. We've got 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. The CMCD is now asking for help, and we're going to come around the corner with the Stridsvagn S1, and we're going to be able to get some shots into the back of the Oni. And I think the Oni in this situation is frankly just panicking. They can't really turn around and go after the S1, otherwise the CMCD is going to be able to shoot them. And well played to the S1. Shout out to you, Ro Zubra, for being able to handle that situation. And to be fair, the CMCD says thank you as well. Obviously, like they had one plan, I had another plan. In the end, their plan kind of worked out. Although I would argue that that Oni didn't exactly play with great intelligence in that kind of a situation. I think the fact that an Oni lost all of those hit points to the one-shot CMCD probably wouldn't happen more times out of 10. And that's what I always try and do. I try and make the plays that I think are going to work in the majority of situations. But actually, looking back at this replay in retrospect, maybe the CMCD is right, because we didn't have long left to be able to get through this game. Do you think that we were really going to be able to deal with 4 vehicles and the 2,500 hit points that the enemy team had at that point if we didn't go and take it to them? So maybe the CMCD was right, and they've actually allowed us to be able to get back into this game and to have a chance to even possibly be able to win it, now ahead on hit points and a whole extra tank. I'm begging this challenger to come and push with me. You see up in the chat there. However, the challenger seems to want to just sit there on their 500 hit points. Maybe they're trying to get a shot in the WZ-111, and they actually managed to get a shot down on them. So it looks like the challenger was trying to help, and he actually gets 2 shots there into the 111-1FT. What I'm going to decide to do instead is, I was thinking about taking... The challenger actually shuts down the WZ, but unfortunately the Sturmil shuts down the CMCD. So you might notice I turned around there, and that was because I really didn't feel like pushing through this corner, especially when there might be a tank up here, or alternatively there could be a Borsig up in this location. And so you see that I'm actually driving backwards up here because I'm so worried about getting spotted by the Borsig. Even though the Borsig is a one-shot, the Sturmil definitely isn't a one-shot. But hopefully, with the little bit of extra damage we're going to be able to put into the side of his tank, he's going to be getting closer to a one-shot, at least for the S1 now. Now down to that 258 hit points. And slowly but surely, even with this awful tank, we've been working together with our allies. Maybe we haven't been on the same wavelength, but maybe my confidence in this tank puts it at an all-time low. And we're managing to get back into this game and now have even a chance to be able to win it. So our S1, our hero over towards the east and flank now, is assigned to push around towards the south. I'm just praying that he doesn't get spotted by the Borsig, otherwise it's going to be very tricky. And so what I'm doing, now knowing that the Sturmil is reversing further and further into the corner, that I'm trying to get out here expecting that the Borsig is going to come down and go after the S1. I know that the Borsig's not going to be able to spot the S1 in this scenario unless he has incredibly good camo rating, maybe even a camouflage net in this scenario, unless he comes down, and I should be able to spot him if he does that. With the coated optics and vents that I believe that I have on this tank and the tank's 390 meters base view range, I should still have more than enough to be able to catch this Borsig. And I'm just so nervous about going around this corner, but with 1 minute left on the game, what can you even do? Wait for the challenger to be able to push around? The Borsig sounds like he missed, or maybe even the challenger missed there. And I'm going to go and have a go for the Sturmil now, because the S1 deals with the Borsig, picking up their second kill of the game. And now it's just a matter of trying to find out where the German tank destroyer is. And there they are. I call in for the big guns. The Stridsvagn S1 picks up their now 3rd kill of the game. And a big thanks to all of the team involved here. This wasn't definitely a single-handed victory, but I'm playing an absolute awful vehicle when it comes down to it. And so that's what you have to do. You have to be a little bit more of a support tank. Try and help your allies as they get themselves stuck into horrible situations against the TS5. The S1 would have definitely lost there, and we would have lost the game because of it. But because we were in that scenario, because we helped out the TS5, and because the Challenger did some really good work at the end to be able to dig out the Chinese TD, as well as the Hero T71 CMCD, we were still able to get through this game. So, yeah, look, I'm not going to try and pull the wool over your eyes and say you just got to get good and you're going to be good in a tank like this. Really, there's no way to make the SP1C as competitive as the more dominant Tier 7 light tanks. That's sometimes not what the game is about. Sometimes it's about just getting through a tank as painlessly as possible and going up a tech tree towards what you really want. It's just funny because in this tech tree, the Tier 10, just like the Tier 7, is an absolute stinker. So an ace tanker here for our 1,348 base experience, and congratulations to Rozruba for picking up, I guess, a high caliber medal here for their impressive 5,200 damage dealt. And if you need more evidence that we were the support vehicle inside this game, we get a Confederate medal for damaging 6 tanks that was subsequently killed by our allies. And I don't think I fired too many high explosive anti-tank rounds here. We still make a 33,000 credit profit. So, World of Tanks, sometimes your tanks are going to rock, and yeah, sometimes your tanks are really going to suck. While you can't change the base statistics of a tank, you certainly can use equipment to try and turn it maybe slightly into your favor. Think carefully about sacrificing luxuries, such as spotting on the move, to maybe be able to gain basic things that everybody can do, like binoculars on a tank. It might take you longer to be able to set up, but when you get 25% extra view range, any vehicle towards the mid and high tiers can still reach the 440 meters spotting cap. Sorry, I should say 445 meters before I get corrected in the comments down below. Importantly, lower your expectations and try and play as a support for maybe at least some of the tanks on your team that don't quite suck as much as the one you're having to play. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. But if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it goes live on Sunday, it's time for the World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, I'm going to be playing my most played tank. It is the M48A5 pattern. And so come along as I hopefully show you why it is my most played tank as I go on my quest to demonstrate the awesome heavy medium American all-rounder. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.